Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Even with the public still scrambling to try to catch up with and digest the political earthquake caused by the black voter boycott of 2024, as black people we have to make sure that we don't lose focus. There's those expecting us to slow down with the orange man about to retake office, but we're not, because our political demands are the new normal, and they're not reliant on whomever is in the White House. Bootlicks operate that way because they lack the character or the initiative to take their fate in their own hands, and they prefer to wait to see which one of their masses is going to feed them. It's been 4 long years waiting for people to learn a lesson that should have been learned in 2012, but hopefully we've begun the process of turning the corner. This is about getting in the driver's seat. That's what comes next, and that means we take the lead in our own affairs instead of waiting to get led around. You can't run free if you're handcuffed to somebody else. So when it comes to our next move, we better start thinking about how it is we can get people who we can trust, people that we chose, into those political offices. Take a look at the utter fiasco that happened in California regarding reparations. A whole lot of those old, decrepit sellout Negroes were exposed. But that's only part of the solution. Once you've identified who the sellouts are, they have to be removed from those places and replaced with individuals that you have chosen, individuals who aren't going to break bad on you. If you actually think that you're going to have black empowerment without actively working to make sure that we get people that we can trust into positions of authority, then you have not been paying attention to the black media's message for the last 15 years. Disengaging from both of the major parties was simply step 1. It was meant to begin the process of getting black people to start acting in their own interest, as opposed to sitting back and waiting to see what options, quote unquote, are going to be put in front of them by the dominant society. The entire reason that reparations was even an issue is precisely because the black grassroots made it a point to elbow our way into the conversation. We got people into those rooms. Nobody was sitting back begging, and hopefully we can get some of these pork chop preachers to speak up for us. Maybe some of them will be moved by conscience. Instead, you had the black grassroots who said, no, we're going to be taking charge. And that is the kind of spirit that's required. For 15 years, I've been saying that we would need to give rise to a generation forged of iron, one that would take a hard-nosed approach to our power, an uncompromising approach. Yes, it is crucial that we call out the anti-black racism that we have to contend with, and the perpetrators of it, and the collaborators. But what is also required is that at some point we're going to have to start taking enemy ground. That's the reason why getting black folks to disengage from both the major parties was important. You're not going to be able to do that as long as you got black folks who are still sitting here with split loyalties, or Negroes whose entire power base, such as it is, relies on them being either in the pocket of the Democrats or, for a precious few, in the pocket of the Republicans. Well, that idea is doomed to failure from the very beginning, because it doesn't matter what pocket you're in, since both pockets are attached to the same white supremacist pants. There have been a ton of political movements in the United States. Many of them have made a lot of fanfare, but ultimately didn't go very far, like, say, Occupy Wall Street. That's largely because you had a bunch of white yuppies who were out there complaining about their economic lot in life. Never mind the fact that in most cases, either their parents or people very close to their families have been the policymakers, so they're complaining about what their folks have been doing in the first place. In our case, we have far greater clarity than that, but we have to start putting action behind that clarity now. You'll often have individuals who call themselves trolling the black media, and they always want to go into people's comment sections or on people's social media, commenting on their videos and saying, you guys don't offer solutions. First of all, these are the very individuals who are the shills and the bootlicks that we keep talking about. So, of course, what they're really saying is, you're not offering to validate what I need to get a job from Democrat politician XYZ, or to get a consulting gig from so-and-so over here. That's what they're really saying. Can you give me a solution to being a professional bootlick? And the answer is no, I'm not going to feed a bootlick. And as far as answers goes, black people have always known what the answer is, but we've been consistently inconsistent about it. Look, we can complain about organizations like, say, AIPAC as much as you want, but you gotta give AIPAC credit for one thing and one thing only. They are crystal clear about what it is that they want. They know exactly what their mission is, and that is, as we see in documentaries like The Lobby USA, to extract as much money and resources out of the United States government as possible. That's their agenda. And they are laser focused on it. Far as they're concerned, as long as the United States is around, their job is to make sure they get as many billion-dollar checks as they can get. Now, I know that there's going to be the usual suspects who say, well, you can't make an apples-to-apples comparison between black people and the Jewish community. I didn't say that there was one. But what I am saying is they at least are clear to themselves about what it is that they want and how they intend to go about getting it. And you don't see them trying to farm out their political power to anybody else. In fact, nobody else does that except for the black community. That's the major thing that has to be changed. I'm sure you probably noticed in the last few years, there's been a lot of people from outside the black community who have called themselves trying to run for political office in the black community. People who we don't know, people we've never met, people who do no business with us, and in many cases, lots of them are immigrants, so they come from countries that practice open, blatant, and often violent anti-black racism. And what happens is they pretend to make nice with us, at least until they think they can get their hands on that political office, and then afterwards, they're doing nothing but giving patronage, jobs, and contracts to their own friends and families. Whenever they're in front of black people, they'll go ahead and give a couple of MLK quotes because there's always a few soft-headed Negroes who go for that. But at the end of the day, they're looking out for their own interest, not the black communities. So since nobody else is looking out for the black community other than us, we have to take a hard-nosed approach to that. And what that means is, instead of waiting to see if somebody else is going to come along, why don't we go ahead and take care of things ourselves? Power is far too important and far too precious to be left up to chance. In every arena of the society and every field of life, the only way that you're able to win in a competitive situation is to get off your butt and get into the game. And truth be told, that's actually the only way to win, period. Nothing's going to fall into your lap. You can be as righteous as you want to be, but unless you're prepared to put action behind your righteousness, all it is nothing more than empty piety. We got to breathe life into the righteousness by putting it with power. And as we all ought to know by now, power is never given. It must be taken, and we should have pride in that. Because as I've always told you, when we fight, we win. We shouldn't be scared to compete or looking around for somebody else to do it. This is our task, and we should glory in it. And don't let anybody tell you that we can judge our progress by what the white media says. We don't do that. We won't be letting white media coverage dictate what we do. We are not looking to them for approval, and we're not even looking to them for validation or to signal boost us. We know that they hear us and they fear us. And now we're going to give them a reason to quake in their boots. Because as we've made progress disengaging from both of the major parties, what goes unsaid is a lot of black folks, especially the under 50 crowd, long stopped listening to these white media outlets. That's the reason why when the Democrats went down, you had MSNBC's ratings absolutely crater. Rachel Maddow happens to be feeling the heat right now. She's taken about a 20% pay cut over there. So what it seems is their golden girl apparently has feet of clay that they've noticed. And David Zaslav, who apparently is supposed to be running things more or less, this guy's talking about going ahead and taking MSNBC and CNBC and spinning those guys off into their own thing, which means that if things don't turn around, they may well wind up getting sold off. So I think this explains why Joe Scarborough and his little shrew Mika Brzezinski were so eager to do that 180-degree turnaround so fast it made everybody's head spin. At the end of the day, these people are all creatures of self-interest. All they care about is keeping their own heads above water. And that's another reason why we don't follow the white media. More often than not, these guys are doing nothing but reporting their own personal biases. That's the reason why they get so many of these calls wrong, whether it's America's misadventures in the Middle East or whether it's the latest election. They always seem to get it wrong, but that's okay. They know their job isn't to get it right. They understand that their job is basically to be comfort food for whatever lost souls might actually watch their drivel. And what goes unsaid is the big service that they provide for white supremacy is making sure that the most potentially disruptive element of the society is kept in check. Do you think it's some sort of coincidence that whenever you look at these so-called cable news networks and such, you notice in all their shows, they're usually going to make sure that they got some black person on the panel at some place. Now, they may not have any Hispanics or Asians or what have you, but they're going to make sure that they got a black person there. Why? We are the political disruptors. That's why. We're the ones who could potentially disrupt this whole little con game. You got a lot of people right now who are sitting back very anxious to see what it is that our next move is going to be. What's going to happen with the black grassroots next? Are they going to be waiting for a better Democrat candidate to come along, waiting for a few scraps from the table? Or have they finally figured out that they're going to have to build their own table? Our discipline and focus during this year's presidential election was good, but we're far from through. In fact, we're only getting started. Up until now, the message of true black empowerment has only been coming from the grassroots, only from people who have been mostly online. What's required next is for this message to be coming out of the mouths of elected officials. That change, though, will have to come from us. It certainly won't be coming from anyone else. When Congress had that reparations farce a few years back, that was an attempt on their part to hijack the entire conversation by holding a show hearing, which was meant to do nothing more than certify in the public mind that reparations doesn't need to be cash. That's what everybody was saying loudly and clearly. And you've seen the white media and their loyal bootlicks like the NAACP all echo that exact same sentiment. Cash reparations does not need to exist. Reparations can be a lot of things just as long as it's not cash. They've all been saying that. People who are supposed to be from different organizations not even knowing each other, and yet they're all saying the exact same thing about this issue, completely the opposite of what they say for everyone else. Just in case you ever doubted whether we're up against an organized offense, now you know. Well, what did we do about Congress's phony reparations hearing? Did we beg and plead? No. We shut their noise down not by trying to argue with the Democrats or beg them to let us play in their sandbox, but by pushing our own agenda on our own. And we've seen which one had the greater impact. The next step that we're about to embark upon is going to be crucial. Nobody's going to do it for us. So while the shills and bootlicks are desperately trying to find out who the next presidential contender might be so that they can beg for a job or audition for a consulting gig, when they talk about being a consultant, that means they're applying to be cheerleaders for this or that candidate. Well, the political parties tend to be pretty slow on the uptake. They usually don't figure out that some consultant isn't able to actually help them win an election until it's years down the line. Placing all of your hopes in a political party doing everything for you is like waiting for a politician to spoon feed you your meals. There's always a 1 in a billion chance that one of them might do it, but there's a far greater chance that you'll actually get fed if you choose to do it yourself. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Michael Somners, Black Voltron Reloaded, TJ, Nikki James, and Zachariah Williams. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Now more than ever, Black empowerment only exists because of you.